Okay, this is Piece by Horace Silver, and we're going to look at, again, chord progression rules as they apply to jazz. So we're going to be looking for twos going to fives, because they tell us locally what our key is. First years will get this out of there, but it should also expand your view beyond just traditional 2 and 5 chords, because Horace Silver, who wrote this, loves chromaticism and sort of yummy, gorgeous jazz notes with this. It's a ballad. If you want to hear this, I highly recommend Bobby McFerrin, his recording of this. It's incredible. It's very, very few times in my life have I gone and listened to some music and went like, wow, that changed my life. This might be one of them. Bobby McFerrin's version of Peace. Yes. Ludoslavsky's piano or violin sonata that he wrote for Midori was another one. When I saw that played, it just was amazing. Philip Glass, Satyagraha, first time I saw that in Seattle, that was also kind of life-changing. Anyhow, let's just review a couple things here. Whenever we see a minor chord or a minor 7-flat-5, we should be suspicious that it's a 2 chord and look for the dominant that comes after that. Because in jazz, first off, in all music, 5 chords, the dominant, right, tell us where 1 is or where home or the key is. Now in jazz, it moves around much more fluidly inside a phrase than it would in a Bach chorale or a Mozart sonata or something by Beethoven or something like that. And so we use these as markers to say where are we locally for our tonality, more than almost cadences, although cadences are important too, okay? That's the main thing here, and we'll spec those out and show you them. But also for first years, don't let some of the jazz extensions, like see this F7 sharp 9 here, or this D7 flat 5 here, okay? Don't let those bother you so much. In Horace Silver's cases, many of the time they're just extensions that have been put on in this thing so that it accommodates the melody that he wanted to have. For instance, the sharp 9 here would be a G sharp, okay? Or an A flat, if you want to think of it that way. And there it is in the melody. So it's not some crazy thing that's happening just for flavor only. Sometimes he wants that there. Again, here, flat 5 is the A flat that's in the melody. This is a great little thing right here. I'm on an E flat minor 7-flat-5, right? So it's this chord and it's like, and then that A flat will persist into the D7 with the flat 5, right? And then persist into the D flat major. So yeah, there's reasons harmonically why he's using these things as well, but he wants these thoroughfare lines in with there, and so that's what's going on. Okay, so that being said, looks like we're in the key of B flat major, right? But it's going to move all over the place, okay? And the first thing that happens here is we have a minor 7-flat-5. Remember, dashes are minor, old school, right? So minor 7-flat-5, and a minor 7-flat-5 is a half diminished, right? So half diminished are typically 2 chords in minor, okay? And remember, we can be fishy with this, but also flat 9s on dominant 7 chords are usually indications of minor too, because, well, let's think about this for a minute. D would be the 5 of G, and in G minor, there's an E flat, which is the flat 9, okay? So this is like D, F sharp, A, C, and then instead of an E, it's an E flat, right? Which would be from G minor. Look where we're headed to. Now, this isn't the key we're in, but temporarily we're pointing to there like it's the key. So as we look at this, we say, aha, I know I'm in the key of B flat. All well that's going to end well there. But this is a 2 half diminished in the key of G minor, right? And this is my 5, 7, flat 9. And I'm heading to G minor right there, okay? But when I arrive, this is a 2, 5 again in a different key. So, you know, in classical, we'd say 1 minor 1 equals, right? 1 minor 1 equals 2 minor 7 in a different key. And that key would be F, wouldn't it? If G is 2 and C is 5, then we're in the key of F. You want to be good at calculating where where D's triangulate to. And this will be my 5-7, okay? Now, this should go to F, and it doesn't. We'll talk about that at the end, because it's the tritone substitution that we're talking about earlier, okay? So as a first-year student, we want to be able to find what we can and then put a bubble around things that need clarifying, right? Okay? And that's fine. Okay, so we're going to leave that for a minute. I'll circle it in red in case you're going, but you'll forget. I won't forget. There it is right there. All right, let's take a look at this. C minor 7, dash means minor flat 5, going to an F dominant 7. This is my 2-5. And you can kind of cheat many times and say, where is it coming to if you need help? F is the 5 of B flat. That's where we're headed to. Okay, so this is now in the key of B flat for sure, right? And this would be my 2 half diminished 7, and you kind of say, well, why that? And it's because it has a G flat for the 5th. It's part of the melody. He likes the sound. If you want to think of it from a classical point of view, it's modally borrowed or borrowed from the minor scale, okay? And this is my 5 chord right here, 5-7, sharp 9. Again, the sharp 9 is just accommodating the melody right there. And this is my 1, major 7. Beautiful. You could almost think of this as saying we will go to my 6th chord, and then we will go to Neapolitan, and I'll talk about that later. And then we'll go 5-1, 2-5-1, right? 6, 2, 5, 1. There's just cool other things going on. Okay, cool. Next phrase. I guess maybe you don't know this song, but it's like, let's see. C flat major 7, it's beautiful, and then our C, half diminished 7, and then our F, and then there. And then the next phrase is gonna push off into a different direction, because Horace Silver is amazing like that. So, let's keep going. I find myself immediately in the next phrase on another, this doesn't fit the key. It's a 2 chord, and this is my 5 chord, right? So if I'm 2 and 5, E is the 5 of A, right? I'm in the key of A all of a sudden. Your ear immediately knows that when you went from this chord right here, the B flat major 7, and then it went to this right after that. It's like, that's not right. We're not in the same key anymore. And you might not intellectually know you're going to A, but your ear knows. So we'll do this, and then we do this, that we're going to here, right? Right? It's the same sort of thing we did here, there. It's the same sort of thing we did here, there. Okay? Same sort of thing we did here, with a twist here, which we'll get back to. So this is my 2 chord. Again, we don't look at cadences so much. 2 minor 7, 5-7. We look at where does this point us to, okay? And these are all chained together in wonderful ways, and the line from the melody and the lyrics unite all that. And this is my 1 chord right here, 1 major 7. Now this is just walking down the bass line. This is like my 6 minor 7 if I'm in the key here. And he's doing this because he wants to have this note here in the bass, and then the G sharp is the 7th, and then he's going to go to my 6th chord, right? And then he's going to make the 7th be walking down so that he can get us to this right there. That's where he's headed to. So this is just 1 and 6. These are passing inversions of that, okay? And it's because he wants to go A, G sharp, F sharp, E, E flat, and land here for my next 2-5-1, okay? So if I have this here, E minor 7 flat 5, and there's a dominant coming afterwards, then you could say, well, what key I'm in? And you'd say, well, D flat, because that's my 2, right? And here, I don't know if I make too much out of these being modally borrowed, suggesting we're in minor, because Horace Silver is just, this is how he hears these lines. He's got this mixture of both. And look, there's my 1 chord right there. It's major 7. So either you're in minor and then he gives you this wonderful pickety third, or you were always in major the whole time and he borrows this for color. I kind of hear it like this is the surprise at the end when I hear that, okay? Here's another weird one where we should be on an A. E flat should go to A dominant 7 and then down there. So here's another place where we're going to come back to and say, like, why is that a weird chord? It has to do with that tritone substitution stuff, okay? And then here we have a series of dominant 7 chords, okay, to our 1 chord. Now we know that in the end we got to come back to 1 because of our key, right? Move this up a bit so it's easier to see, okay? But how do we explain these? Well, let's start in on our secondary dominants and stuff like that. So normally you'd go 2, 5, 1, right? 2, 5, 1 would be the way we'd finish this, just kind of like we did here, 2, 5, 1, okay? But instead of making it a normal 2, he's made it be a 5 of the 5, because C is 5 of F, right? And he turned it into a dominant. So this is a 5, 7, flat 5 for flavor of 5. And we should be going to a 5 chord, okay? All right. And this should be an F chord, but it's not, it's a B chord. So let's start talking about tritone substitution. I did this in the previous video that I put out on a much easier piece where it had one example of it, How High the Moon. But a tritone substitution is, instead of using a dominant chord, like the one that we want right here, F7, right? We use the dominant chord that is a tritone, which is a diminished fifth or an augmented augmented fourth away. So same quality of chord, right? But dominant. In this case, it could be dominant flat 5 if you wanted, but it doesn't have to be. B dominant, F sharp, or F dominant. And this is an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth, depending on which way you're measuring away, okay? And the reason that works is because if I spell F7, F, A, C, E flat, these 2 notes right there push us towards the B flat major chord. That's why the dominant or the 5 chord does that. It goes from here and pushes us into the, right? Those are my action notes. But if I spell my B flat or B7 chord, the other dominant chord that's a half step away, that would be a B and a D sharp. And I'm going to not make it F sharp because they put a flat 5, but this is an inert note. It doesn't really matter. Okay, it could be F sharp, could be F, doesn't matter. This is just a flavor note. And then my A right there. And I want you to notice that, by the way, these are the action notes for this chord too. B should normally go down to an E chord. Should go here. This note here and this one here should go into here, right? They push there. But notice that this note right here is the same note as there. They're in the different spots, but they're the same, and this note is the same as this. That's why tritone substitution works. Tritone substitution is taking a chord that's your 5-7 chord and swapping it out for another 5-7 chord that's a tritone away, because the 3rd and the 7th, ironically, which make a tritone, are flip-flop, but the same thing, so the action notes are the same, right? And the quick way to calculate that is to say, not calculate a tritone away or an augmented fourth, diminished fifth. If you don't know, tritone means 3 tones or whole steps, and that's the distance of a augmented fourth or a diminished fifth is 3 whole steps. That's why they call it tritone. Okay, maybe I should have led with that. Sorry if that wasn't clear. But the quicker way to do that is to say, well, what's my target chord? It's B flat, right? F would go to B flat. So just go up a half step and you'll get your tritone substitute right there, right? That's it. So if this is my target and I'm using a 5 chord to get to it, instead I could swap out another 5 chord or dominant chord that's a half step above, which makes a tritone away from there, right? Okay, so you can look at it a bunch of different ways. You can say, this is my 5 of 5, and instead of 5, I use the tritone sub for 5 right there, okay? Or if you'd like to say, no, this is my legitimate chord right here, this is going down by a half step as well. Like if this needed its own 5 chord, then that would be an F sharp 7 chord, which is a tritone away from here. See how this is a half step ahead? So he's playing it both ways. He's saying, well, if you think of this as my 5 of 5, then there's the substitute for my 5 chord right there. Or if you want, you could say, this is the chord that I'm using as a tritone sub right there, like this. And now I will use not the 5 of 5 for that, but the tritone sub for that. In other words, you can keep going down by half steps with dominant chords, and you're getting this pseudo-dominant circle of fifths sound. It's really cool. All right, so this is the tritone sub for the F chord, and that's why that's there. The flat 5 just makes it sound cooler. Yeah, and I'm going to pop this over here just for the sake of people who are thinking classically. A dominant chord with a flat 5 is also called a French augmented 6 chord. And instead of, when you see it like this, it's not German, it's French, because this has been lowered, then you think of it as the exceptional kind that becomes a dominant instead of a predominant. It takes the place of the dominant. It's the tritone sub with the flat 5. So we would label this in classical, we go French augmented 6 of scale degree 1, and we'd know that this is acting as a substitute dominant or pseudo-dominant coming into 1 right there. Okay, now let's go back up here to these other ones, and you're going to find the same thing. So I'm going to D flat major, right? And normally I'd go E flat minor 7 to A flat 7 to D flat major 7. That would be 2, 5, 1. Okay. Instead of that, he uses, now I'll put these beside each other, A flat 7, right? Instead, he uses the dominant 7 that is a tritone away. Notice that it's a half step above D flat. That's the other way to calculate it, okay? And it's a dominant chord, it's got the flat on there. So this is the tritone sub 4, 5, 7. And in classical music, we would have called that the French augmented 6 of scale degree. Well, whatever you want to call this, flat 3, if you want in that key, right? Okay, because this is flat 3 in the key of B flat. And so it's the tritone sub. It's acting as a pseudo-dominant into there, okay? Finally, we're going to come up to here, and we're going to find a similar thing. We went 2, 5 into, should have been an F chord. Should have been like, what the F? Where's my, I shouldn't say that. It's not nice. Okay, it should be an F7 right there, because 2, 5, 1. Instead, he does it backwards. Instead of saying, I want to go to F, so I'll use the tritone sub going G minor 7, calculate a half step above, and call it G flat 7, which would then go to F as the tritone sub. Instead, he says, guess what? I'm going to say that equals tritone sub. It is the tritone sub for my next chord. So instead of this being the target, he made it this by turning it into not a 5-7, but a tritone sub. C goes down by a half step to C flat, right? Yeah. And you get these really elegant lines. Like, look at this right here. A, G sharp, these are my bass line. A, G sharp, F sharp, E into E flat, into D flat, into C, into B flat. And so from here for his wind up at the end, like he goes into a second phrase and he goes, okay, so he's gonna play nice. Right. Now here he's gonna make, chords that match. There's my one chord, right? Right? So he goes, and then here. And I'm just gonna highlight the bass line with my left hand right here, right? It's like, and then to the there, kind of, let's see, yeah, this. And then half step into this, right? That's my, then he's gonna go a half step down into here, right? He's gonna this, and then a half step down into here, again flat 5, right? Right. And then half step down into my, right? So wonderful global planning, flavorful melodies, the extensions using French of ones as opposed to just plain old dominants, which would have been German, right? And that's what it is. So how does this help you when you're looking at jazz music? Let's summarize. 2 5s are abundant, and they tell you locally where you're headed to, because the 5 tells you what your next chord is going to be, right? Sometimes, depends on the composer, songwriter, but sometimes instead of it going down a 5th, like D to G, or F to B flat, or E to A, you'll just see these half steps, like a dominant goes down a half step. When that happens, you know that you have got the tritone substitution for the normal dominant. Okay? It's the other dominant chord that can work for you there. And if you're thinking about classical, that's where we have the German or French chord, if it's got a flat 5 on it, when we see that tritone substitute, becomes a pseudo-dominant, and you call it French or German of whatever scale degree that's going in. It's not acting like a predominant anymore. Okay? All right. Hopefully that's useful and interesting. And yeah, we will look at more jazz charts in class.